Good morning. I'll call this hearing to order. Thank you to the witnesses for taking your time and sharing your expertise over the next couple of hours. Today's committee is asking a very simple but important question. Am I hearing myself twice?
Yeah,
I am, okay.
it says Republicans coming in late.
I thought it was the Democrats not being here yet, but anyways.
They're quiet.
Good point, good point. Is how do we get, maybe that was all LBR. Okay, she's here, see, okay. That's it. How do we get artificial intelligence right? That is the ultimate question I think we are struggling with as a nation and frankly, as a committee. That means making sure AI strengthens our economy, supports small businesses, and protects consumers. It means keeping America ahead of China and our adversaries. It means using American innovation to help families facing the high cost of housing, borrowing, and everyday life. AI is a powerful tool. Like any powerful tool, it brings both opportunity and risk. We should not run from this potential, but we should also not ignore the risks. We should ask the right questions, listen to the experts before us, and make sure America remains ahead. For the people we serve in South Carolina and across this nation, the real question is whether this technology makes life better. Can it help a family in North Charleston save time and money on a mortgage? Can it help a small business in Greenville become more competitive? Protect a senior in Columbia from fraud? Bring new jobs to communities like Spartanburg? If we get this right, the answer can be yes. AI will also change the way Americans work. That does not mean we should fear the future. It means we need to make sure workers have the tools, training, and opportunity to benefit from it. The future of work should not be something America fears. It actually should be something America leads. AI solutions that help increase affordability for American families will not come from government bureaucracy. They will come from entrepreneurs, innovators, workers, and small business owners willing to use these new tools to build, compete, and solve problems. This is where AI can be part of the solution. Roughly 20% of small businesses in the United States today are already using AI to help lower the cost of doing business, which means prices are going to be lower for consumers. And in the financial services sector, AI can reduce friction and, frankly, increase speed. It can improve customer service, help detect fraud faster, help small businesses do more with less. AI should be a tool that strengthens American workers, not one that makes them feel replaceable. There is dignity in work, and if America leads, AI can help workers build skills, support their families, and create new opportunities in South Carolina and all across this great nation. But responsible AI innovation matters. And when we consider regulation, we must ask whether it will make it harder for a community bank to lend, a startup to grow, or a family to access credit. We need thoughtful and well-informed solutions that protect Americans and mitigate major risks without hampering innovation or pushing it overseas. That is why this hearing is so important and, frankly, timely. AI is already changing our economy and our markets. We must make sure the next chapter of responsible innovation is written here in America, not in China. Cybersecurity and national security must be taken seriously. The United States cannot afford to let China or any other adversary gain a technological edge in artificial intelligence. This includes global markets where China and Huawei are pursuing an aggressive agenda to displace U.S. technology around the world. The world's tech stack, including powerful AI tools, must be built on trusted U.S. networks and technology. We have to carefully craft export control policy that is clear and concise, allowing U.S. companies to compete in the global market while ensuring we are not handing our adversaries tools they can use against us. This hearing builds on the work we've already started through member roundtables. Today, We will hear from experts who can help this committee better understand the opportunities, the risks, and the choices before us. I look forward to your testimonies. If America leads, AI can help lower costs, improve affordability, expand opportunity, strengthen small businesses, protect our financial system, and keep America secure. That is the future we should be fighting for. Ranking member, floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for holding this hearing. Artificial intelligence has extraordinary potential and presents extraordinary risks. Americans across this country are deeply concerned about how artificial intelligence will affect their lives. Americans are also concerned about what looks like corruption in plain sight driving the Trump administration's AI policy. Influential tech giants are concentrating ownership over powerful technologies and attempting to rewrite the rules that govern them. A corrupt Trump administration basically is giving them whatever they want. The impact on American families is massive. First, AI companies are on a spending spree to build data centers. This is the infrastructure that supports AI, and families in areas surrounding these data centers are already paying a price. Residential electricity prices, which have risen more than 16% since Donald Trump took office, are expected to climb as much as 40% by 2030. Nearly 1 in 3 households is struggling to pay their utility bills. The Trump administration's response has been a weak request for voluntary commitments from big corporations, and that leaves families footing the bill. Second, AI companies are addicted to debt. Early in AI development, these companies financed their own investments, but now they are borrowing upwards of $1 trillion to finance spending on data centers, chips, and other AI infrastructure. They borrow from private credit funds that in turn borrow from banks. This means that if AI tumbles, it will bring down many in private credit, and that in turn will risk bringing down giant banks. The possible failure of AI companies looms larger every day. AI companies that are unable to increase revenues and service their massive debt loads could trigger massive losses in the financial sector and another 2008-style crash. That, in turn, could wipe out huge amounts of value from Americans' retirement accounts. Third, Americans are worried about what will happen to their jobs in a world of rapidly improving AI capabilities. AI has already started reshaping the workforce. While we don't know what the long-term effects on unemployment will be, we cannot wait around to see how many jobs will be eliminated before we start to prepare for the coming upheaval. We have a decision to make. Either AI will profit a handful of the richest people, making them even richer, or the benefits of AI will be used for all Americans. If we continue to do nothing, the billionaires will suck up all the value from AI. But if we start now to tax AI and to use that money to fund free education, apprenticeships, and encourage new job creation for the workforce, we can share the benefits of AI across our country. Before we hear from our witnesses, I want to raise one other issue. China is also working feverishly to develop AI, including AI weapons systems that can be turned against the United States. One company, NVIDIA, makes the chips that are powering AI's advances. In recent years, NVIDIA's valuation has ballooned to nearly $5 trillion. That makes NVIDIA the world's biggest company, and NVIDIA's CEO, Jensen Huang, a very powerful person. And Mr. Huang wants to sell NVIDIA's chips to China, which will profit his own company and advance China's AI development. Now, I invited NVIDIA's CEO, Jensen Huang, to testify at this hearing, and he refused to join us. I invited Mr. Huang because he and NVIDIA are lobbying hard to get a blank check from the Trump administration to allow the sale of advanced chips to China. Mr. Huang's efforts have alarmed senior military leaders here in the United States who have warned that such technology could strengthen China's military and put our own national security at risk. No matter. In Trump's DC, money talks, and President Trump appears to be giving policy handouts to the highest bidder. If it's not plain old-fashioned bribery, it sure smells like it. Mr. Huang and NVIDIA have been active here in DC. NVIDIA donated $1 million to the Trump inauguration. Mr. Huang made a big donation to Trump's favorite project, his gold-encrusted ballroom. Mr. Huang wheedled his way into a seat on Air Force One on the President's Summit with President Xi in China. Mr. Huang even managed to score a meeting with President Xi himself, along with President Trump, about NVIDIA's business interests. All that sucking up to the president has paid off big time for Mr. Huang. America had strong export controls that would have blocked NVIDIA from selling these chips to China, but the Trump administration is relaxing these rules. The Trump administration has also turned a blind eye as massive numbers of these chips have been sold elsewhere, then somehow magically made it to China. The American people deserve to hear Mr. Huang answer hard questions from both sides about the role he has played in undermining our national security. AI holds tremendous promise, but Americans are rightly concerned that it could further rig our economy. Congress can no longer be a bystander as the risks from AI grow nearer and millions more American chips are sent to China. It is time for Congress to stand up so that the American people can share in the success of this technology and not just be left holding the bag for whatever goes wrong. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I'll now introduce the witnesses quickly. Today we have before us Mike Flynn, Senior Vice President of ITI, David Feith, Senior Fellow at the Hudson Institute. We have Will Reinhart, who is a Senior Fellow at the American Enterprise Institute. We also have Dr. Sarah Myers West, who is the Co-Executive Director of AI Now. First, we'll hear from Mr. Flynn. You now have the floor for 5 minutes.
Chairman Scott, Ranking Member Warren, distinguished members of the Senate Banking Committee, my name is Mike Flynn, and I'm a Senior Vice President at the Information Technology Industry Council, or ITI. Thank you for inviting me to testify today. ITI represents 80 companies at the center of American innovation, including companies that operate at every layer of the AI stack: chip makers and designers, leading frontier AI labs and cloud service providers, cybersecurity firms, and the software developers that bring AI to consumers in the US and around the world. ITI's members are investing hundreds of billions of dollars in the United States to build semiconductor fabs, conduct research and development for new AI applications, and drive innovation at every layer of the AI stack. Artificial intelligence is the most significant driver of economic growth in a generation. And the competition within ITI's membership and the broader IT ecosystem is fierce. Frontier AI models rely on thousands of highly skilled engineers, advanced semiconductors with features many times smaller than the width of a human hair, and networking that operates at the speed of light, to name only a few of the vital inputs needed to build and run a frontier AI model. We should view the American AI stack as an asset to U.S. economic security. Congress must not take this for granted. U.S. companies need clarity and certainty to sign multi-million-dollar contracts with customers, spend billions of dollars on custom chips, and continue the trillion-dollar investments in America that are making the U.S. the undisputed AI leader. The question before this committee is how to protect American AI leadership while promoting adoption of the U.S. AI stack around the world. The AI supply chain is highly specialized, resource intensive, and globally complex. An AI server in an American data center providing AI to customers in South Carolina depends on memory from South Korea, chips from Arizona made with tools designed in Massachusetts. A semiconductor may touch as many as 70 countries before it reaches a consumer. Key parts of the supply chain are based in allied nations in Europe and Asia, especially South Korea, Taiwan, and Japan. Because of this reality, the United States must work with like-minded nations on economic security policies, like export controls. The agency Congress has tasked with this important work is the Bureau of Industry and Security, or BIS. To meet the demand of this moment, BIS needs appropriate resources and oversight. Recently, ITI endorsed 6 bills that advance this through the House Foreign Affairs Committee. These bills are a down payment to improve BIS's ability to fight diversion of controlled items, ensure timely licensing reviews, and develop AI export controls side by side with industry experts. Effective export control policy and enforcement must be part of a broader strategy that enables the U.S. technology sector to remain agile and competitive in global markets for the long term. With the remainder of my time, I'd like to touch on one other issue that I know is top of mind for this committee, and that is the cybersecurity of financial institutions. Frontier AI models are developing and accelerating the pace and presenting new challenges for cybersecurity professionals. That is why it is more important than ever that industry and government work together to address these emerging risks. One thing Congress can do right now is to ensure a long-term reauthorization of the Cybersecurity Information Sharing Act, or CISA 15. This is a critical law that protects the ability of organizations to share cyber threat information and vulnerability information, not only with the government, but with one another. There is more work to be done. We welcome the partnership of this committee on these serious questions of U.S. economic security. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for convening this hearing. I look forward to the committee's questions.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Fife.
Chairman Scott, Ranking Member Warren, and committee members, thank you for the opportunity to testify. My focus is AI competition with China and how export controls can help preserve American security and other interests. We face a historic opportunity today with 3 aspects. First, the AI industrial revolution will shape not just American civilization, but human history. It's hard to overstate the need to get AI policy right, especially regarding our strategic challenge from China. Second, we're at a hinge point in Trump administration AI policymaking, which rightly recognizes that America must win the AI race with China. Recent events involving the super powerful Mythos model, chip smuggling, and export control loopholes show why we need better strategy, rules, enforcement, and oversight. Third, this committee has a particularly key role to play. Members here and across Congress have introduced an admirable set of bills to strengthen America's export control system, bolster national security, and assert Congress's role in this key area of policy. What's at stake in the strategic contest over AI? One essential feature is the personalization of technological power. This is in some ways very positive, in some ways very threatening. AI offers personalized medicine, but also personalized warfare, and especially ominously, personalized state power. Will this technology ultimately advance systems that protect human freedom or systems that stifle and tyrannize? There is some good news to start with. In the US-China competition in AI, the decisive factor is likely to be computing power, or compute. Here, the United States and our allies enjoy a substantial advantage. Today, China's best AI chips are much less capable than America's, and thanks largely to export controls, their chips are falling further behind. Compute is the lifeblood of AI, and China has less of it at lower quality than do the United States and our allies. That makes compute China's principal choke point in the AI contest. But this advantage is not self-sustaining. It will last only if US and allied policy preserves it. This is where export controls come in. Unfortunately, current U.S. export control policy has not been equal to the task. The Trump administration's top-line policy is to prevent America's most advanced chips from going to China. President Trump has said this repeatedly. His administration's AI action plan also calls for tougher export controls and more allied cooperation. But these policies are not yet realized. Instead, our stand on exporting advanced AI chips to China has become less clear. Commerce Department entity listings haven't kept pace. Controls on semiconductor manufacturing equipment, perhaps the most important issue of all, remain loose. Remote access remains unaddressed. Amid signs of massive smuggling, especially via Southeast Asia, we have seen a sensational federal indictment, but little adjustment from our export control system. And we have only recently learned that alarming loopholes in U.S. rules were evidently created last year, allowing sales of the most advanced U.S. chips to Chinese firms outside of China, and maybe also allowing China access to leading-edge fabrication at allied firms like TSMC. Finally, on distillation attacks, supercharged IP theft for the AI age, we risk repeating 20 years of past failure to counter China's hacking. Hence the historic opportunity before this committee. I'd recommend enacting the set of complementary bills now before the Senate, including the AI Overwatch Act on exports to China, the Match Act on equipment, the Remote Access Security Act, the Chip Security Act on location verification, the Deterring AI Model Theft Act on distillation, and the Chip Equip Act, protecting American fabs at home. Each addresses a key piece of the puzzle. Also, enhance oversight of commerce. Draw on the classified record and real evidence from export control enforcement in the field. Finally, beyond export controls, you have an opportunity to codify the Commerce Department's ICTS authority and help protect U.S. data center infrastructure from sabotage by Chinese exposed hardware. Key technological developments have changed world history: iron, gunpowder, nuclear weapons. AI is another. The future now turns on whether America, Western civilization, and liberal democracy will lead the age of AI, or communism, oppression, and state power will. That is why these issues matter so much. America should innovate at home, export confidently to allies and trusted partners, and deny China the capabilities it needs to overtake us. Thank you. I look forward to your questions.
Thanks, sir. Mr. Reinhardt, the floor is yours.
Chairman, ranking member, committee members. As a kid, I was obsessed with my grandfather's red tractor, a classic Farmall H. For decades, you could find it parked in between the garden and the barn, basically, always pointed towards the house, acting like a sphinx, protecting the cornfields. I've since learned that the Farmall was truly revolutionary for the farms and families where I grew up in central Illinois. Tractors first spread through the West, or through the wheat belt in the 1920s, but it took another 2 decades for the tech to be adopted for use in the corn belt. Farmalls were especially important for small to medium-sized family farms because they were high quality but affordable tractors that could do a range of different tasks. It took years, however, for those farms to truly adapt to the new technology and to make it useful and to change how farming was done in the Midwest. As I see it, AI is in its wheat belt stage. It is having an impact in some very narrow and important categories, but yet it is yet to be transformative to the broader economy. As I've detailed in my written testimony, one of the biggest trends that I'm seeing currently right now in AI is that it's a skill equalizer. In customer support, software development, legal analysis, writing, and education, AI continues to do its best by boosting those who are at the bottom. But when tasks fall outside the model's current capabilities, when workers are already at the frontier, AI can do more to hurt performance than to help it. Importantly, judgment still matters. So as I see it, Congress really should be thinking about 2 things: scenario planning and better data sources. For this committee in particular, planning around agentic AI could be very useful. Agents are only now getting deployed, and I know there's been some discussion of this, but they could have some incredible and important impacts in finance and banking and commerce. That's something that I have been focused a lot on, and I believe you should as well. But we also need better data sources. Right now, the data on AI usage only has effectively a 15% response rate. There are better ways to collect information, especially through payroll data and other sources that are currently being deployed. But I would say that it's this, right? The Farmall eventually transformed farming across the Corn Belt, but it required the right conditions. Congress can help create those conditions for AI. The opportunity is very, very real. but so is the work that's required to do it. So thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
You doing?
And please, on behalf of the chairman, Dr. Sarah Myers-West, you're welcome with your opening remarks.
Thank you. Chairman Scott, Ranking Member Warren, and esteemed members of the committee, thank you for inviting me to testify on this important set of issues. My name is Dr. Sarah Myers-West, and I, along with my colleague Amba Kak, lead the AI Now Institute. We're an independent policy research center founded in 2017 to study artificial intelligence technologies. I also previously served as a senior advisor on AI at the FTC, where my role focused on the effects of AI as they were emanating across the broader economy. There's a tremendous amount of hope articulated in the vision for AI, that it will have transformative potential that could lift our economy and improve the quality of life for all of us. We're equally seeing a tremendous amount of pessimism from the public about what this technology means for their lives and their livelihoods. This divide is because there are skewed market incentives that have shaped corporate AI development and that are driving concentrated risk in the economy that the public is being asked to absorb. Importantly, many of these harms are already here, and they're being felt by everyday people, and they're going to continue out into the future, especially if things go exactly as the industry intends. My message to this committee is that we must put the needs of the public back at the center of the AI economy. Congress has an obligation to intervene before an economic crisis occurs, starting by alleviating the burden that people are already feeling from AI, exercising congressional oversight over AI firms that have grown in size and in political influence, and stopping a bailout of the industry that is arguably already underway. There are three core areas that I urge this committee to consider as priorities for intervention. First, addressing the risky and capital-intensive nature of AI investment. AI companies are engaged in a race to the bottom, one in which firms have exhibited an extraordinary willingness to court risk that's not just borne by the firms themselves, but by the wider economy and the public. AI development is increasingly being financed through complex and opaque instruments that hinge on the private credit market and are often kept off balance sheet through the use of special purpose vehicles. We're also seeing circular spending deals that hinge on the projected future revenues of just a handful of AI companies. And if those revenues fail to transpire to the tune needed to justify this capital expenditure, the house of cards could come falling down. Second, the effects of an AI bubble would be acutely felt by the American people. It could wipe out a tremendous amount of American household wealth. And this is because the economy at large is already significantly exposed to AI risk across several vectors, ranging from increased market exposure for everyday families, to access to credit, to job loss. But we don't have to wait for a financial collapse to see these effects of AI play out across the economy. Working class Americans are particularly exposed to an AI-driven market downturn. For one, the private credit companies have made a casino of American workers' financial security. We're seeing a transfer of wealth from the public to these AI firms, devaluation and dislocation already emerging in the job market, and rising prices, especially in the utility sector, that could serve to depress consumer demand. Importantly, many of these factors will remain even in a scenario where there's no bubble burst. The vision for success in AI hinges on the significant displacement and devaluation of jobs across the economy. I want to underscore, if the vision for AI fails, we could face a market correction. If it succeeds, it looks like mass displacement, and this is not a bargain any of us need to accept. This is why it's important for Congress to stop a bailout of the AI sector that's already in many ways underway. AI firms have received extraordinary subsidies, from federal backing of loans to direct funding to allocating federal lands for data center infrastructure. And this is all before Congress has had the chance to meaningfully act to protect the public and the economy from the risks posed by the industry. The public's already aware of the risks that they're being asked to assume, and this is fueling the generalized antipathy that they're expressing towards AI. If the end goal is to promote American innovation and to build an economy that works for everyone, Congress must act. It must start by focusing on measures that can alleviate the economic burdens that are already being felt by the public. by shedding light on AI industry financing structures through the use of its oversight authority, and most importantly, by committing to stop the bailout before it deepens any further. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your testimony today. I'll start by asking the first questions. Our economy will benefit immensely from American companies' leadership in AI and advanced technology. However, we received a letter just recently, today, from Anthropic that Alibaba executed the largest known distillation attack on Anthropic to date. That means that our adversaries are willing to lie, cheat, and steal to get access to the information necessary to make China the most dominant player in the market, as opposed to the free market economy that we have that produces the world's greatest thinkers and innovators. And I think that's a very important point, because when China lies, cheats, and steals, the American consumer pays the ultimate price for that. And when I'm in restaurants in Charleston and around the state, one thing I hear a lot about is the cost of electricity, water usage. There is this fear associated with higher prices in an economy where it's very difficult for people to live paycheck to paycheck. And so when you put together these amazing attacks from our adversaries, the fear of our consumers, it puts us in a position where, as a committee and as responsible leaders, we need to have a better appreciation for how the costs can come down and how to push back against the threats that could drive our cost up and make us less relevant. Mr. Flynn.
Senator, thank you for that question, and I think you laid out the depth of the challenges really well. When you think about the distillation attacks in particular, that's a real challenge, that the extent to which China will go. To me, the answer is about where is the U.S. AI stack? Are we seeing it in Europe and the global South? And I think it's worth saying that's not a guarantee. The Spanish Ministry of the Interior just recently signed a significant deal with Huawei, despite the fact that the U.S. government over several years has done a lot of education and advocacy, going back to the 5G conversation not that long ago about the dangers of having the cybersecurity risks of having Huawei in their core infrastructure. Still, it seems like we're having that conversation all over again.
Mr. Reinhardt, ChatGPT is socialized throughout all of our devices, it seems like, and of course all the other ones are working really hard as well. How do we help the average family in this country benefit from lower prices, more information? I'll use this as an example. Someone was looking for an air conditioning unit at home, and they used these models to do research that would take several hours in 90 seconds. I think so. We have a lot of opportunities to share with the American people the benefits, the opportunities that come with this technology. I'm not sure that the information is getting to the end user, but certainly the benefits should.
Yeah, figuring out how to use technologies properly is something that is just it's a thankless task and something that is very difficult to do. I mean, I work with this every single day, and even I'm not completely sure of some of the capabilities. But we do see a lot of people using, as you mentioned, we see people using agents, as they're called, to figure out the best prices for airlines for a whole bunch of range of different products that they're buying. And to me, that I think is it's a really prime benefit of these AI technologies, is giving consumers choices and showing them what's actually happening in the marketplace and giving them the ability to choose the better price and things that work for their families and for themselves.
Excellent. Mr. Fife, what is the single biggest bottleneck to maintaining U.S. leadership in AI right now?
Thanks, Senator. I think it's compute broadly, which includes both the chips and the chip-making equipment, very crucially.
You said that in your testimony. That's one of the reasons why I called on you to ask that question. Help me understand perhaps the larger perspective on export controls and the role it should play in maintaining America's stronger position, especially against China. But perhaps the part of the question I would like for you to answer in 25 seconds, by the way, is how do we make sure that our allies don't have a back door, whether in the Middle East or Asia, that goes to China and gives them access to the most powerful chips? Now you have 17 seconds.
It's important. There's a very big allied component, which partly reflects the strength that the U.S. and our allies together have in the leadership in these key technology areas. That's in semiconductor design and in the manufacturing equipment. But getting allies, including the Dutch and the Japanese especially, on board is really very important. And we have only a mixed record of doing it over the last several years.
You did what I could not do in 23 seconds. Good job. Ranking member?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we need to address the serious national security risks of allowing advanced AI chips to end up in China. Last week, the New York Times reported that NVIDIA's chips have been, quote, sought by nearly every branch of the Chinese military. And China's been getting its hands on this technology. Federal prosecutors allege that billions of dollars of chips and servers have been unlawfully diverted to China during the Trump administration. Now, I invited NVIDIA CEO here to testify. He has claimed there is no evidence of chip diversion and that the Chinese military doesn't want his chips, but he will not show up here to repeat those claims under oath. Mr. Fife, you served on President Trump's National Security Council until last year. How worried should we be about these chips falling into the wrong hands?
Thanks, Senator. I think very worried. I mean, the implications are very significant in ways that you pointed out. In part, military, domestic repression, also China's commercial strategic ambitions. There's an important additional aspect, which is that if we sell them these chips, it actually helps China compete against us in third markets around the world, helps them export their cloud, for example, and undermine the market for U.S. cloud exports all around the world when we're interested in otherwise maximizing the exports of the AI tech stack of the United States around the world.
So bad, bad, bad is what I'm hearing you say. Now, Congress has pending legislation to put a stop to that. Senator Banks and I have introduced the AI Overwatch Act, which would ban the export of advanced AI chips to China. Senator Kim and I have co-sponsored the Match Act, which would ensure China's not getting the equipment it needs to manufacture advanced chips on its own. And Senator Cotton and I have co-sponsored the Chip Security Act, which would ensure that we can track when AI chips are smuggled. Mr. Fife, do you think Congress should pass these three bills?
Yes, and kudos on the bipartisanship.
Good. Mr. Chairman, there's broad support for these bipartisan bills. I think we should mark these up, this legislation this month, and I hope you'll have a chance to agree on that.
Well, the gentlewoman from Massachusetts, yield the rest of your time and I'll start.
No.
Okay.
So I want to turn, though, to how the AI boom is being funded. AI companies are on track to spend a whopping $7 trillion on AI infrastructure by 2030 and are turning to shadowy financing alternatives to meet their financing needs. If the AI companies can't make payments on their huge debt loads, they could trigger massive losses across the financial system. Dr. Myers-West, if an AI bubble bursts, what would be the impact on families who may not have a single dollar of investment in an AI company? Would they be hurt?
The impact on them would be significant, even if they haven't directly invested in AI, because we could see compounding effects across people's retirement funds, their pension funds. We'll see job layoffs and a potential credit freeze. The underlying conditions of our economy make us very ill prepared to deal with this kind of market exposure, and our social safety net is not well prepared for these kinds of conditions. So it could be a perfect storm that will be felt most acutely by people who are already struggling to make things work, and it would be irresponsible to look away.
Thank you for that answer. You know, AI executives are already well aware of what's at stake, and they are right now trying to lay the groundwork to leave American taxpayers holding the bag if their big bets go bust. OpenAI, for example, has pushed the Trump administration to, quote, lean in and assist the industry by, quote, de-risking AI expansion, including expanding federal tax incentives and loan guarantees for AI companies. So I'd like to get our panel of experts on the record and just go down the line, one sentence or even one word. Would you support the Trump administration bailing out big tech CEOs and AI companies? Dr. Myers-West.
I would not support a bailout of the AI industry.
Mr. Reinhardt?
Goodness, no.
I like that. Mr. Fife?
Hard to generalize. I would say there are some funds that come from places like the CHIPS Act that the Commerce Department still has and could use very productively.
I understand that, but do you want to bail out AI if these bets go bad?
I think the CHIPS Act on onshoring semiconductor manufacturing is a better bet.
Mr. Flynn?
I would agree with David. I would also say that I haven't seen any particular proposal.
I'm sorry?
I haven't seen any particular proposal, but happy to take it back.
Happy to take it back. I'm out of time. But I got to say, trying to backpedal on the question of whether or not these guys should make trillion-dollar bets and then be able to turn around and say to the American public, the taxpayers are going to bail us out. We did that in 2008. We shouldn't be doing it again. Sorry, Mr. Chairman, I apologize.
Senator Rounds.
Thank you. First of all, let me just thank you all for being here. And second of all, I really appreciated the opening statements that all of you provided. Mr. Flynn, I'm just going to begin with you. Do you know of any bailouts requested by any of the current AI companies?
Not to my knowledge, Senator.
Does anybody know of any bailouts that are being requested by any of the AI companies? See, here's the deal. I think it's fair to say in this country, we recognize that artificial intelligence is here and it's not going away. The real question is China going to lead in AI development and take the opportunities, or is the United States going to take the lead and be the place where the AI development actually occurs? In the United States, we believe that it should be for the betterment of everybody and that the developments are such that it will grow our economy. Mr. Flynn, has the development of artificial intelligence in the United States added to our GDP?
Absolutely, Senator.
Mr. Feith?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Reinhardt?
Indeed, it has, yes.
Dr. Myers-West?
We've seen a number of places where the American public has already been feeling the pain, and
You
we have
can't tell whether or not AI has actually developed or improved on GDP growth in the United States.
the predominant factor has been the investment in AI infrastructures rather than AI itself.
So you see, what we've got right now is in the United States, we've done everything we can on a bipartisan basis to make sure that the United States does not fall behind. If we don't do this correctly, AI will be used in the defense of our country, but it'll also be used by China in offensive operations. Today, in the United States, we use it in both offensive and defensive operations. We're better than our adversaries are right now. That saves American lives long term. But if we're going to do that correctly, we have to make sure that this is the place where those developments occur. That means that the rest of the world, which is also a market for artificial intelligence and the systems that literally people are going to use, they're on the rails that are developed in the United States today. We don't want those rails to be China's rails. We don't want Huawei doing it. We don't want the companies there doing it and taking advantage of it. So, Mr. Flynn, what happens if an organization such as NVIDIA is not allowed or is restricted from being able to market their products around the rest of the world? Does that mean then that China then has an advantage in terms of selling to the rest of the world?
Senator, I think this is a core question of this hearing. There's an inherent tension that needs to be addressed, and this is why the role of BIS is so profoundly important, not just on the export control side, on the enforcement side, but their ability to issue licenses in a timely fashion and to work with the regulated community so the information necessary to ensure that the U.S. technology stack is being used around the world.
Mr. Feith, I really appreciated your background and the fact that you've indicated that while we need to continue to lead the world, there also needs to be the appropriate way to make sure that we keep that away from other adversary countries such as China. Today, would it be appropriate if we were to get the Commerce Department additional resources to be able to monitor and to restrict that from getting into the wrong hands in China?
Yes, certainly.
Okay, let me run this by you again once on this thing here. Is there any reason that we should be trying to chase any one of these organizations, these hyperscalers, any reason why we should chase them out of the United States by trying to tax them at a higher rate than other businesses would be taxed?
No, I don't believe so.
Mr. Flynn?
No, Senator.
Is there any advantage at all to the American people if another country, including China, takes the lead on the development of artificial intelligence in this once-in-a-generation opportunity to advance GDP in our country?
Certainly not.
Goodness, no. I do not. I fear a world where China is leading on AI.
Can you imagine a world in which, if you use artificial intelligence correctly, you can actually improve the quality of life for Americans? We don't talk about it much, but what happens as we integrate biomedical research and the development of artificial intelligence, being able to make decisions at a very, very rapid pace? Mr. Flynn, does that make a difference for the quality of life for the American families?
Absolutely, Senator.
Mr. Fight, do you agree with that?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Reinhardt, you've been kind of quiet today, but would it be fair to say that there are real opportunities for the American public to benefit from the development of artificial intelligence in the United States rather than in China?
Yes, yes, very clearly. And I would say one thing I saw recently, an individual had a very rare complication to a heart medication, and by putting it into ChatGPT, he realized that he needed to switch his heart medication. So I think that these small stories are actually incredibly important for individual lives.
Thank you. And look, I'm running out of time, but here's the deal. Artificial intelligence is here. It's not going away. We've got to be able to do the right types of guidelines for the development of it, but we have to do everything we can to keep that development here in the United States, both for economic development, but for the quality of life that it proposes for the people that live in this country. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Senator Reed?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to all the witnesses. Mr. Feith, there is concern. I heard a bit of Senator Round's testimony about providing China with H20 and H200 chips from NVIDIA. And one reason, and this is what I've heard from national security experts, is China is very rapidly and very adeptly using those chips to expand its very sophisticated and indeed weaponized chips. Is that accurate?
Yes, sir. And I think we've seen valuable testimony from the U.S. military and elsewhere on that.
Now, China is promoting, and promoting is an understatement, the Huawei chips and other chips. They are not, I don't think, bringing the H20, H200 chips in to displace their own chips. On the contrary, I think they're doing all they can to promote their own Huawei chips and others. Is that right?
That's right. They want very much to indigenize, and they want to gain so that they can not only satisfy their domestic market with Huawei chips, which right now they're way behind in their ability to do, but their ambition is to do so. And then beyond that, they want to then compete to export all around the world against U.S. chip makers and cloud companies.
So is it fair to say that what they really want from H20 and H200 chips is to get the most advanced American technology they can to incorporate in their chips and also to incorporate in their sophisticated weapon systems?
Yes, and I would say that there are other chips, including the Blackwells, that they've demonstrated a major interest in getting as well, even though they're not licensed for export, like through smuggling.
So the president's decision to allow them to get H20 and H200 chips what would you consider the rationale to be if, in fact, they're using it to exploit our technology, not for any other reasons, perhaps?
Well, I think the administration stated that their calculation was that these are not the leading edge chips. They are second or third level chips, and that sending them to China would therefore not give China the best, but could complicate China's ambitions to indigenize. My sense was that the calculations probably cut the other way, but I do think it's important that the administration has been very clear. The president has said repeatedly that the principle is to deny China the leading edge chips, to deny them Blackwells. That's been maintained. I think it's important. It's important to follow it up with robust enforcement, including around smuggling and on possible loopholes.
No, I think that makes sense, but I think, as you point out, the H20 chips, et cetera, are not going to be indigenous to China. They don't want American chips to be dominant in their market, and they are exploiting these chips, and they may not be the most exquisite chips we have, but frankly, they appear to be better than what the Chinese have, and they're weaponizing them. Is that fair?
That's right. And I think part of your question also points to this question of what is China really about? Is it about simply maximizing their compute access and potentially maximizing business for U.S. exporters, or is it about indigenizing and replacing? And I think China's ambitions in semiconductors are as they have been in other industries. They will only take U.S. technology as long as it takes them to indigenize and then overtake us. We shouldn't think that we can addict them to these U.S. exports.
Thank you very much, Dr. White. Dr. West, we have to think seriously about the impacts, particularly in employment impacts of the wide-scale introduction of AI. I know the former Secretary of Commerce, Secretary, Raimondo, wrote a very good editorial in the New York Times indicating we're not ready yet for the impact. Could you comment on that?
Yes, I mean, I think we're already seeing, firms narrating layoffs as due to AI, whether or not the technology is in fact the causal factor. And here, I think it's critical that workers who are sort of on the front lines of experiencing the impact of AI, whether that's being laid off or their jobs being devalued and their wages depressed, be positioned to have a crucial say in the terms on which AI is deployed in their workplaces.
And thank you very much. And I'll yield back my second.
Thank you. I'll give it to the ranking member for 5 seconds.
I just want to say that when I was talking through the bills, I failed to mention that the lead sponsor on Match is Senator Ricketts, and it was just an oversight. I apologize. It's a terrific bill.
Senator Kennedy, the floor is yours, sir.
Mr. Feith, is that how you say your name?
Yes, sir.
I continue to read and hear that we have to win the AI race. What does that even mean? Generally, we heard that with 5G. Generally, we hear that when somebody in the private sector says, we're behind China, give us some money. If we are ahead, eventually China's going to catch up. And then China gets ahead, and we catch up with them. Ultimately, and there's no finish line here, where the first one who crosses gets a gold medal. This stuff keeps evolving. Aren't we ultimately going to have to sit down with China and reach some sort of compromise in terms of a modicum of cooperation?
Well, I think, Senator, I think the questions about whether this race vocabulary and metaphor are exactly right are very well taken. I think it's inexact at best, but there are comparisons possibly with previous generations of strategic technology like nuclear weapons, where I think maintaining that the US and our allies have a stronger foundation of strategic technology, including as it needs to be innovated across generations and including as after the Soviets got a nuclear weapon in their time, several years after us, is extremely important. And the fact that this is commercially innovated.
Okay, I got it. I'm sorry. I don't mean to be rude, but I don't have time for history. Dr. West, I want to make sure you're heard here. Well, before I come to you, let me ask Mr. Reinhardt. Do you think we ought to have state-owned AI companies?
No,
Are you a fan of the state-owned companies in China?
No, not
Where
not at all.
the federal government takes a big stake and runs the show?
No, I do not.
We can't even deliver the mail, can we?
Especially in my neighborhood, yeah, it's really bad.
And the stuff has an address right on the front, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think that we can be smart about how we do grant programs. I mean, there's ways that we can be smart about the
Grant programs?
well, just the various, we've had, as we talked about, some of the CHIPS Act, parts of the CHIPS Act program are still out. There
You
are, of
understand there are alternatives to grants. They're called
course.
loans.
course, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm just saying that I think there's lots of parts of the federal government that we can think about being smart about our investments in AI. And that doesn't necessarily require any sort of ownership.
Well, look, I think the people developing AI, this is true worldwide, but it's certainly true in the United States. These are brilliant people. Right now, they're spending money to try to be the biggest and the best and the wealthiest. And I don't mean disrespect when I say this. I'm proud of them as American entrepreneurs, but I trust them like I trust a rest stop bathroom. I remember when one of the leaders in another hearing about a year ago, I asked him, I said, man, you must make a lot of money. And he said, oh, no, I do this for the goodness of the people. I only get my health insurance paid. Wrong. So, Dr. West, you make a good point, but I guess my question is, what do you expect us to do? It's here. And people are going to lose their jobs. I hate to see that. I might lose mine. But what are we supposed to do about that?
I think it's a great question because there's this sort of generalized environment that this is inevitable and we all have to just kind of deal with the consequences.
Yes, ma'am, I understand the problem. I admire the problem. I'm looking for a solution. Tell me what you think we ought to do when somebody loses their job as a result of AI.
In the next 10 seconds or so.
Oh, wow.
I think we need strong accountability measures that restrain the actions of this industry that are sort of experimenting in the wild with the release of these
Dr. West,
tools.
that tells me nothing. I'm sorry. I'm way over. But you're a good man for letting me go over.
Yes, sir. Well, I just wanted to associate myself with your comments about the rest stop bathrooms. Yes, sir. There's not a lot of confidence in those.
You
sir.
gotta be careful. The
Yes, sir.
coffee's lousy too.
Yes, sir. Well, hadn't had that experience.
Especially in Maine, evidently.
Senator Warner.
Well, I'd like to invite my colleague from South Carolina and Louisiana. A certain former governor of Virginia made it a top priority to improve the quality of all the rest stop bathrooms in the Commonwealth. And we welcome you to use our facilities at your discretion. Let me answer. I think what Senator Kennedy asked is a really good question. And I've talked to every one of the big heads. I spend more time on AI probably next to Mike Rounds of anybody here. And there is no macro answer. 4 years ago, we thought, well, let's make everybody learn to code. That was well-intentioned, but not the right answer. Frankly, one of the things we ought to do at a macro level is in high school, junior and senior year, start convincing people that if you're going to major in business administration, and economics, which is the biggest majors in public universities, and those are the jobs that are going to be most disappearing, we ought to convince a heck of a lot more people to go into healthcare, where there will be jobs for some time to come. I'd also say I think the analogy on the race is a little wrong too with China. I absolutely agree with Mike. We got to stay ahead on the leading frontier models. But the fact is, even right now with us ahead, the Chinese open source models are 10x cheaper, use a lot less tokens, a lot less electricity. And while we're leading, most of our smaller entities are already using Chinese models. And I hope the panel has seen, there was a Booz Allen study out recently. I think it's quite good, and I recommend it to all of my colleagues, that if you ask the Chinese models a question in English or French, anything other than Mandarin, you get a different answer. And if you happen to note that I'm working on a government project, you get an answer that comes with flaws built in. So the idea that China, having been in the telecom business and seen this movie with Huawei, this is nothing compared to what's happening in Chinese models. Where I disagree with some of my colleagues, The idea that we're going to just do pedal to the metal regardless of outcomes, I think most of us agree we screwed up by not putting some guardrails on social media. This is peanuts compared to where. So the way I'm looking at this, and I apologize, I will try to get to a question, is I think we need to realize, I don't think moratoriums on data centers make sense, but I sure as heck think making sure there's no misuse of power, water, backup generators, setbacks, non-disclosure agreements, so communities what they're getting into is an enormous amount of sense. And they have to pay part of the share. And there's a bunch of ideas around how we address that. I'm looking at an idea that doesn't raise their taxes necessarily, but since the benefit will be deferred, maybe we ought to defer some of the accelerated depreciation for a couple of years so we can gain some revenue to help on the retraining as we decide what to retrain. We think about social media to your kids is nothing compared to what a chatbot can do to your teenage son. Or I think back 4 years ago, we had every one of the AI companies promise in elections, we will never do deep fakes. Bull. They're out there. They could correct that. We do need to have them put pedal to the metal. And Mythos, thank God it was Anthropic. When the head of the NSA and Cyber Command came and said, this tool broke into almost all of our classified systems, not in weeks, but in hours. And one of the things I don't know how we do, and I know there's a big debate in the administration, but we're not going to get this fixed if we have a less ethical CEO in terms of simply voluntary pre-testing. Now, how we get to the right incentives, and it doesn't have to be 90 days, it could be 30 days. And I do think the dislocation, I'll make a bet with any of you here. John, we're at 9% recent college graduate unemployment. I will bet you dollars to donuts right now, it'll go to 30% by 2028. And that will have a double whammy, not just the age cohort, but you're going to have a lot of pissed off parents and grandparents that just spent $250,000 on an education. And we hear a lot of talk about, AI adjacent jobs. I do believe they will come, but we need a, whatever the Democrats will call it, a New Deal program. Maybe we can call it a Reagan era program. Something that says for 5 years how we get through this gap. And we got to have the industry help us. If it's simply a government training program, we'll screw it up. I was going to ask you on CISA and the ISACs, which I think need to be refunded. Mr. Flynn, I think you've even mentioned that. And by the way, you've also supported the bill that Senator Rounds and I have. Thank you for that. Quick comment on the ISACs, and then I'll get out of your hair.
Profoundly important, Senator, and thank you for so many years of excellent work on cybersecurity, elevating that issue set, which is wonky and not everybody wants to talk about it. The ISACs are a huge piece of this equation, making sure that the highest leverage cybersecurity players, their information on vulnerabilities, other threat information, gets down to players with fewer resources is critical to making sure that we're prepared.
When I get that response, I'm going to leave. Thank you all. Apologize not getting any of the others.
Thank you. Senator Ricketts.
Just want to remind my colleague from Virginia that betting is no longer allowed.
Senator Ricketts.
Thank you. Thank you to all of our panelists for being here today. Communist China is trying to dominate AI. They're trying to do it for a variety of reasons, but one of the biggest reasons is they think this is how they can dominate us militarily, whether it's through swarms, hypersonic missiles, attacking us through cybersecurity, that sort of thing. And semiconductor manufacturing equipment, or SMEs, is the ultimate choke point in this competition. Many people are familiar with the amazing lithography machines, EUV and DUV, for printing features on chips. Yet SMEs is much more than that. It also includes hundreds of other advanced technologies like testing machines, etch tools, chemicals, and specialized design software. Chips, models, and applications all flow downstream from this hardware. Despite pouring billions of dollars into domestic SME initiatives, Beijing still hasn't indigenized these highly complex technologies. That's why if you are going to control one part of the semiconductor supply chain, it should be the SMEs. Mr. Feith, do you agree that export controls on SMEs are the most effective way to leverage the limits of the PLA on its AI capabilities?
Yes, Senator. Thanks for your leadership on that.
The Trump administration pioneered using export controls on SMEs to blunt China's chip ambitions. Key allies eventually followed, but our lead has dangerous gaps, and those still remain. The controls are narrow and less restrictive, and they have loopholes. Foreign companies are backfilling the Chinese market with critical dual-use tools. This harms American workers, risks our compute lead, and fundamentally undermines our collective national security. As has been mentioned before, and thank the ranking member for mentioning it as well, I introduced the Match Act with Senator Kim. Not only, in addition, I'll throw out Senator Risch and Senator Schumer, also co-sponsors on that bill as well. And I would encourage this committee, as the ranking member did, to do a markup on this bill so that we can move on this as quickly as possible. Our bill prioritizes diplomacy first, giving the state and commerce departments a clear window to negotiate with allied governments and get the alignment, but it also establishes a firm deadline. If our partners refuse to align, the U.S. must must act to stop allied firms from weaponizing this technology and giving it to our adversaries like Beijing. Mr. Feith, do you agree that weaker allied export and servicing standards on choke points for SMEs create an unacceptable vulnerability in our strategy to contain China's AI ambitions?
Absolutely. As you said, the Match Act looks to build on the first Trump administration's export controls on EUV lithography, which have been by far the most effective and crucial across years, and demonstrate the enormous benefit that we can get from these export controls. And I think expanding that in the way that the legislation points to make sure that we are aligned with allies as much as possible, and that we have additional lithography technologies like DUV immersion covered is really very important.
The Match Act provides a clear timeline for diplomacy, but we cannot negotiate indefinitely while Communist China continues to advance. If our allies fail to match our prohibitions within the bill's timeframe, do you support applying foreign direct product rule to close foreign compliance gaps? Mr. Feith?
Yes, and I think that reflects the record. I mean, it was the ability to do that and to negotiate with that possibility that has gotten us the best cooperation we've had over the last 8 or so years with the Dutch.
We do want to negotiate, but we also have to have a hammer, right?
Certainly.
If we don't act now to close these loopholes, we run the risk that Beijing indigenizes and dominates SME, just like they did for EVs and critical minerals. Do you agree that it is critical that export control loopholes are closed as soon as possible?
Yes, sir.
Be another reason why we should get the markup on this. China's civil-military fusion strategy ensures commercial breakthroughs immediately advance the PLA. And it eliminates the boundary between civilian technology and military end uses. By law, if Beijing asks, companies must hand over any technology to the military. The Pentagon understands this is a massive challenge. It just expanded a list of Chinese military companies, the 1260H list, and added several prominent consumer technology titans. The list restored memory chip makers CXMT and YMTC, but it also added 3 of China's top AI builders, Alibaba, Baidu, and Tencent. Because of this civil-military fusion, it is impossible to track or control any technology once it enters technology. That's why we have some of these other things like the Chip Security Act to mandate location verification technology is a key part of managing this challenge. We need to make sure that we have this. Mr. Feith, if China's military-civil fusion economy, do you support the Match Act's appropriate countrywide controls as a choke point on SMEs and its efforts to apply these controls to other affiliates and subsidiaries?
Yes, certainly, Senator. And I'll just say quickly on the 1260H list and Alibaba, it speaks to the question that Chairman Scott also led with respect to Alibaba and the Anthropic distillation. Having them identified as military-affiliated companies, given military-civil fusion, is very important. And we've got export control rules that come into play with that designation that are also valuable.
Great, thank you.
Senator Van Hollen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for holding this hearing. Thank all of you for your testimony today. We're all trying to get our arms around a very rapidly moving and developing AI universe with increasing capabilities. We recognize that these capabilities can bring benefits to Americans in areas like medical research. And we have embraced innovation, and we should continue to do so, but we should make sure we have the appropriate guardrails in place, in my view, as we do that. Millions of Americans are asking themselves what this means for their jobs and their ability to earn a living through hard work. There are questions about whether or not AI will replace humans in making critical military decisions. I think that would be a mistake. We also have AI agents, and are they going to replace individual decision-making in many areas? So lots of questions. I'm glad we're having this hearing. One area, of course, is the question of worker displacement. That's an area of concern. I've been looking at legislation and proposed it in the past before the questions of AI arose with respect to how we can deal with chronic long-term unemployment. And I worry that that could become an even more acute problem going forward. So Dr. West, if you could just speak briefly to what you see as the risks of workers in terms of job displacement. A lot of different theories and warnings, but where do you think we are right now? And would it be useful to begin now to look at how we can prevent chronic long-term unemployment that is at least in part caused by AI?
I think that's exactly right. We are already seeing indicators that workers are feeling the experience of job displacement, whether or not AI is at the root cause. AI is sort of being attributed as the underlying factor. And our social safety net is just not well set up right now to be able to kind of catch people when they experience that displacement. And so I think focusing there first, and making sure that we design our unemployment, our other healthcare, like the other elements of our social safety net that will help us contend with the potential future impacts on the workforce is an important place to start.
No, I appreciate that, and I think it's, as you say, it's not too early to really give that some serious thought. I want to turn briefly to a question that I heard Senator Warren raise in her opening statements, and Senator Ricketts just alluded to it as others have, which is the issue of our export controls on very high-end AI technologies and chips. I think we would all agree that AI can be significant in adding to military capabilities. Is there anybody who disagrees with that statement? And so I have been concerned about the loosening of export restrictions to some of our chief military adversaries, like China. There was just a New York Times story the other day that reported that the Chinese military has sought out high-end chips from NVIDIA. And President Trump has seemed eager to compromise national security to grant favors to friends and cronies. NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang wants to sell more chips to China. Like any company, he wants to sell more for his shareholders, and he has been cozying up to President Trump. He gave money for Trump's ballroom project. He went to $1 million a plate dinner at Mar-a-Lago, and on and on. And sure enough, President Trump announced licenses for NVIDIA to sell chips to China, the H20 and the advanced H200 series. And again, as we've all acknowledged, these have military applications. So we need to be careful. Dr. West, what can we do, and others may want to answer as well, what can we do to prevent this continued diffusion of high-end chips and AI technologies that could come back to bite us when they're deployed by other militaries?
I think that you're right to point out that the chip problem. I think what I would add to it is in fact that there is a broader challenge faced by the sort of focus on redeploying commercial off-the-shelf AI models in national security contexts. We've seen the ways that they have tremendous amounts of security flaws and vulnerabilities, and I think it's important that we also be addressing the potential integration of those vulnerabilities into the critical infrastructures in which these systems are being deployed. I really worry about the approach of using only voluntary measures to test and validate and look for these vulnerabilities in these systems.
Appreciate it. Anybody else want to weigh in on this? Thanks.
Senator, I think it's a fantastic question. BIS, strengthening BIS. Export controls are only going to be effective if the Bureau, if the agency charged with doing that work can effectively administer those programs. And right now, I think we've seen, at least what I've heard from ITI companies, is a real challenge in BIS's ability to administer the export controls that are on the books.
Thank you.
I'm glad you raised that. Thank you.
Senator Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for having this hearing. Just a quick lightning round of questions. Do you think the time is come and gone for data centers to receive any type of government incentive? I'll lay that out for you, Dr. West. I'm going to assume no.
I think that they've received enough incentive.
Right, so no more. So we could just say no more, right? We could just say any city, county, state does not need to give any form of tax incentive to any company building a data center, yes or no?
I think these need to be responsive to the local communities in which they're being deployed, and what we're hearing from those communities is no.
So no more money. Mr. Reinhardt?
Generally speaking, I'm not a big fan of tax carve-outs, broad base and low rates, but I do
Just
think,
pay like anybody else.
yeah, yep.
Yeah. Ms. Fife?
Sounds right.
The average American interacts with a data center more than 100 times a day. Totally understand the conversation and the challenges that constituents may face in this, and I think that is incumbent on ITI member companies and our industry to do a better job in educating local populations. Data centers support 5.5 million jobs in America in 2024, so there are benefits to local communities, and it's on us to make sure that those communities know that.
All that's great. So do they get tax incentives, yes or no?
I'm sure the answer is yes.
Yeah, but they shouldn't, correct? You would agree that that time is gone. Like we should not be giving handouts to companies that are building data centers. Would you agree?
Not necessarily. Data centers are an incredible part of.
How about car dealers? Should they get tax incentives?
Senator,
They employ thousands of people too.
absolutely.
But my point being that this is, I think, where the anger comes from. Why would a company that's a multi-trillion-dollar company need any money? There was a situation in Ohio. Carlyle Group came in, built a data center in Akron, and we gave them $4.5 million. Like, why? And I've said to David Rubenstein at Carlyle, give them money back. You don't need the money. And if you need the money, you have a shitty business model. That's the problem. So number two, start with you, Miss. Crappy business model. See, the best part of being Catholic, Sunday, confession, it's all over. So switching to power, President Trump put in place the Ratepayer Protection Pledge. It's very simple. I live in Avon, Ohio. I don't want to compete for electricity with a giant data center. So data centers should not add to the cost of electricity for average working Americans. Would you agree?
I would agree, yeah.
Go down.
Yes, of course.
Yes.
Yes.
Right. So you represent the industry. So you can, with full confidence, say there's no scenario on Earth in which a data center is built that doesn't either generate its own power or does not have a increased impact on electricity prices. You would advocate to say you should not do that.
Senator, speaking in generalities, I can't speak for every data center in the country, but certainly ITI is supportive of more electrons in the grid, bring your own generation, getting data centers the power they need.
But no impact on electricity. That's really important, and I applaud President Trump for that Ratepayer Protection Pledge. Number three, environmental impact. These systems need to be closed loop and have no impact on the environment or a positive impact. Agreed?
Agree.
Yes, very much so.
Sounds right.
As a generality, yes.
Right, because we screwed that up in Ohio. The Ohio EPA put out a statement that said we were going to lower the water runoff requirements for data centers. That's next level insanity. The last one, when these data centers come in, they should have a positive impact in the community in some way. What that means is up to that local community, whether it's workforce grants, improving infrastructure, but they need to be good public citizens. Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that, and I think that the communities should be the leader.
Yeah, absolutely. Whatever that community needs.
Yeah, yes, obviously, and these data centers do bring in lots of money in property taxes. So I think that.
But so does every single solitary commercial business.
Of course, yes, of course.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so these are, I think if we can get through these four principles and data centers behave this way, the operators, the hyperscalers behave this way, I think we could get this conversation in a different place. And I think this is very, very common sense. Real quickly, Mr. Fife, I'll ask you the question, shifting gears completely. We have vehicles that are made by China that connect into critical infrastructure, record videos, send back data, send back high definition photos on a scale of really, really, really crazy stupid to common sense. Where would it be to allow these cars to come into the United States?
Full on crazy stupid.
Catastrophically stupid. Okay, great. Thank you.
You're done? You gave time back. That's fantastic. All right, Senator Smith.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, Ranking Member. Welcome, everybody, to the committee. Dr. West, I'd like to start with you. I'm very interested in the intersection between AI and housing, and fair housing in particular, and I want to talk with you about that for a little bit. So, Congress passed the Fair Housing Act in, I believe, 1967 or 68. Actually, Walter Mondale, my home state senator, led the way on that, and it's been a long-standing tenet of our country that we should not be discriminating when it comes to housing. And so, interesting how AI intersects with this, right? Because we know that AI tools can, there's ways that they could be beneficial to housing. They could make it easier to build, they could make it more affordable, they could make it more accessible, but also experts have warned that without anti-discrimination protections, they could also, create risks for renters and homeowners. We've all heard about this sort of, the algorithmic pricing of rent as just one example of that. So this is just an open-ended question to you. Would you, could you talk a little bit about this and what you see as the opportunities as well as the challenges of AI when it comes to housing and particularly fighting housing discrimination?
Yeah, I'm so glad that you brought this into the conversation because it's one of the things that the public sort of directly is interfacing with AI systems, but the kind of AI that is more used on us rather than by us, right? It's AI that's used to set the price of rent or to determine what the cost of somebody's mortgage is going to be. And in those uses, we see a few particular effects. One is that these systems have a tendency to sort of scale and amplify existing patterns of inequality across society. But in doing that, they also make it harder for the average American to see the effects on it's harder to see that you are being discriminated against and to be able to take action.
It's sort of a like you don't know what you don't know scenario when it comes to how what rent you're being charged or what your mortgage rate is, for example.
Exactly, and it ratchets up the information asymmetries between everyday people and people who are in positions of relative power. Landlords, mortgage lenders sort of have greater insight and information and access to data that they can use in ways that, intentionally or unintentionally have the effect of ratcheting up inequality that everyday people are feeling.
And so we have laws that say that you can't discriminate against somebody when it comes to housing. But if we're not enforcing those laws, which I think some of us have real concerns about with this administration, then doesn't that then amplify amplify the discriminatory impact of some of these AI tools and also just make it so much harder for people to get any, relief?
I think that's exactly right. It's both the lack of enforcement compounds with the inability of individuals to then go and seek remedy.
So this is something I think that we need to really pay attention to, Mr. Chair, as we think about AI impacts. I want to just touch on one other thing. There have been some very interesting proposals that have come out in the last weeks, I'll say, around how AI systems that are trained on the collective, knowledge and data of Americans, that the wealth that is generated by those systems should be shared, whether it's in a sovereign wealth fund. Senator Sanders has a proposal, I believe even Sam Altman has had a proposal. And so could you just talk briefly about what you think some of these options are and how we ought to think about as policymakers, how people that are generating the data and the information that is fueling this incredible boom in wealth for very few people could actually be shared by everybody?
Sure. I mean, it's good to see an interest in approaches that cut right to the heart of AI companies' political and economic power. I think that that's the right place to be starting from.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's equally important that we get the incentive structures right. And so I think that there's two components here. One is that we make sure that there's an approach and policy that provides for the kind of safety net needed. That's to help the public to weather whatever changes might be coming. But equally that we also ensure that our regulators have the right kind of accountability measures in place to make sure that the actual use of these tools isn't then going to cause other kinds of harm.
Right, so just to be blunt about it, if you're creating an incentive structure where the public sector regulatory function is also, on the other hand, benefiting from the wealth that's being generated by the entity being regulated, that could potentially be a negative incentive.
I think that's the tension that we need to resolve in the policy approach here, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Banks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, first of all, for holding this hearing. There is no contest that matters more to America's future than the race to beat China in artificial intelligence, and I share your commitment to this issue. Really appreciate you organizing this hearing. The nation that leads in AI will set the terms of the world's economy and command the high ground in military power. That's why I believe that the United States must lead, and so does President Trump. America has to make the best chips, develop the best technology, and protect what we build. Our most advanced AI chips are the crown jewels of American power, and we cannot let them end up in the hands of the Chinese Communist Party. Our most cutting-edge AI chips have been smuggled to Chinese military companies through third nations, and China is using these chips to build AI models that rival ours. Strong export controls will keep America ahead instead of handing the lead to Beijing. I have worked on legislation, including the AI Overwatch Act, with Congressman Brian Mast, the chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, to make sure that the Chinese military cannot access any of our highest-end chips, just as President Trump has said. Mr. Feith, my bill, the AI Overwatch Act, is designed to put America's export control enforcement on a firm footing. It would stop the most capable chips from going to Beijing and building the Chinese military. When President Trump sits across from Xi Jinping, it strengthens his hand to say that Congress has his back and that our most advanced chips are not for sale to our adversaries. You already responded to Ranking Member Warren earlier that you support the AI Overwatch Act, but can you talk more about how ensuring that China doesn't gain access to leading-edge chips protects America's national security like what the AI Overwatch Act is designed to do?
Yes, thanks, Senator, and thanks for leading on that, working with Chairman Mast in the House and others, including your Democratic colleagues on it. The importance, as you said, is partly to codify some of the Trump administration's own policy that we're not going to send our leading edge chips to China, and then putting in a structure for, I think, a really important enhancement of the relationship between the Congress and the executive branch on how we do exports of these most critical technologies, because like you said, they're fundamental for military purposes, for all sorts of security and intelligence and human rights purposes, and they're fundamental to the strategic competition broadly between the US and China, our tech companies and theirs all around the world.
And some of the critics of AI Overwatch suggest that somehow, I mean, this seems ridiculous to me, but somehow that AI Overwatch or writing export controls into the law might weaken our hand. I mean, that's outrageous, isn't it?
I think that sounds right to me.
You have also made the point today that the United States writes strong export control rules that they often fail to enforce. And we continue to see smuggling networks moving billions of dollars in high-end chips to the Chinese military, much of it routed through Southeast Asia. There are other export control bills like Senator Cotton's Chip Security Act. Senator Ricketts has been a great leader on this issue through the Match Act. Both bills that I fully support and I've co-sponsored. They're common sense policies that address national security while also ensuring American economic competitiveness is not harmed. What is the biggest gap in our export control enforcement today, and how can this committee seek to fix it?
Well, I think these bills are especially important. I mean, bills that focus on smuggling, focus on the ability to enhance things like location verification on chips. You know, just in the last 13, 14 months or so, we've had some influential voices, argue that essentially there's no such thing as smuggling. It might be physically impossible, was the claim. Now we've seen mounting evidence, evidence in news reporting, evidence in the indictment by the Southern District of New York recently of some leadership of one of the biggest server companies in the world. And there's a sense that there's a lot more out there, I think, in the intelligence record and in the sort of things that that our export control bureaucracy is able to see, but hasn't always been able to take full action on or prevent. And I think legislation that focuses on it, as well as budget support. But I think this is fundamentally a matter of real policy prioritization, and then the budget would follow that.
Thank you. My time has expired.
Senator Kim.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you all for joining up. I just have to say, I'm so glad that the chairman called for this hearing. I think this is one of the most consequential topics that I've had to engage on in a hearing in my time in the Senate so far. And I think that from what I've heard, there's wide agreement amongst my colleagues about the importance for export controls and for engaging. I thank Senator Ricketts for working with me on the Match Act, Senator Banks and others that I've had a chance to work on. But I think what I'm trying to hit home here, Mr. Feith, I'd like to just connect with you on this because, certainly the administration has taken some actions, but how important is it that we push forward on this legislation and try to create an enduring and comprehensive framework? How important is that for us to be able to take up here in Congress?
I think very important. I mean, there's a really important role for statute that lasts.
Because I would say that the temporary nature, if the idea is that these export controls could very well shift from administration to administration, how does that affect how allies might engage or how our adversaries might engage or how business might engage?
Hey, I think it's hard to generalize. I mean, we've got qualities of our political system that are designed for steadiness and for long-term codification, and we've got aspects where the discretion of an executive is important, and that's part of why we have cycles in our politics. So I think some of that is natural and appropriate, but I think to your fundamental point, Congress has an enormous role in in this part of the of this national security challenge. This committee, of course, has oversight of export controls, and there are major opportunities that I think sponsors on this committee and elsewhere in the Congress have pointed out to really bolster national security, strengthen our export control rules and enforcement capability, and kind of assert the Congress's role in ways that would be lasting on this sort of nicely interlocking set of aspects
That's right.
of this national security problem.
And I hope that we can work together to build that long-term resiliency and that direction for our country. And look, given the speed in which the technology is advancing, as well as sometimes the lag in which it takes to implement law and rulemaking, would you say that it's important for us to move as soon as possible on this?
Yes, sir.
And when we're talking about aligning with our allies, we certainly talked about in terms of what's going to have the strongest impact to impede and stop gaps from forming that our adversaries can exploit. But I would also say that it probably also has a benefit of trying to level the playing field for U.S. companies in terms of how they're engaging abroad as well.
Yes, I mean, and the level playing field is especially important when it comes to the question of so-called allied backfilling. Cooperation with our allies is really very important, including so that we don't have companies from important allied countries that aren't subject to the same types of national security restrictions that U.S. companies are subject to, because these are national security concerns vis-a-vis China that we share together.
Chair, I just wanted to say that there's been strong support for the Match Act, for these different efforts we're doing from outside experts, industry stakeholders, national security experts. And so to that end, I ask for unanimous consent to place a letter of support for the Match Act signed by a broad-based coalition of stakeholders into the record.
Without objection.
Mr. Flynn, I don't necessarily have a question here, but I just wanted to thank you for bringing up the importance of supporting BIS and making sure that as we're pushing forward on the HIS export controls that we have the effort to be able to come behind that. And to my colleagues here in the committee, I'm leading the appropriations effort to try to increase funding to BIS. I hope that that's something that we can continue to push on together. Dr. West, I wanted to just talk to you. One thing that I hear a lot of concerns about, especially from seniors and others, is about fraud and what might happen next when it comes to AI's capacity to just amplify and magnify that so far beyond anything we've seen before. What are the practical steps that we should be looking at about fraud from a government, an industry, and financial institutions section?
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought this up because we are seeing a pattern where scams and fraud are on the rise, particularly with the off-the-shelf and inexpensive availability of generative AI tools. So there's an ecosystem around fraud where law enforcement and social platforms and financial institutions and tech companies all play a part. I think that we need to place our greatest emphasis on the platforms and financial institutions that have the greatest insights through the amount of data that they're able to collect to identify scams, and to stop them sort of means that we need to be like protecting against them occurring in the first place. So we should be requiring more of those institutions as the starting place.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I just want to end by just again reiterating some of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle. I hope we can move forward on a markup on the Match Act and other important pieces of legislation in this committee. And with that, I'll yield back.
On behalf of the chairman, Senator Blunt Rochester.
Thank you, Ranking Member Warren. I have to say, I literally have so many notes on my dais here that I don't even know where to begin, because this issue is just so consequential to our country. So thank you so much for your thoughtful testimony as well. It's consequential to our economy, to our health, to our national security. And over the past year, I asked Chairman Powell, when he was here, I asked Chairman Warsh about the impact that AI is going to have on our workforce. And it was interesting to me because what literally came out of it was just the uncertainty. Mr. Reinhardt, you even mentioned data and the data that we collect or don't collect. We had the BLS a nominee before us yesterday in another committee. And from my time in the House to being here in the Senate, in the House, I started a bipartisan future work caucus, and that was almost a decade ago. And now it is literally here before us. And I can say I get to look at it from that lens, and also I've got bipartisan legislation right now with Senator Sheehy, the AI Fraud Accountability Act. I've looked at it from AI literacy to help prepare our families. And Dr. West, I think you put it so perfectly that we need to put the needs of the public at the center of AI policy, the needs of the public. And so I want to start off by saying, as you said, there's a lot of feelings out here about this. People are either really, really excited or really, really scared. They're excited about what they maybe can do from shopping or decorating an office, maybe, mine, or
Not so much, but yes.
mine. But they're also afraid that they're going to lose their jobs and that this will have a detrimental impact. And so many news reports recently have come out about new entrants into the workforce, whether it's college students, women in particular, and people of color disproportionately being impacted by and exposed to occupations most vulnerable to AI. So I'm concerned that the AI is moving much faster than we are, and we're not taking advantage of the disruptions or the opportunities. So Dr. West and Mr. Reinhardt, if you could pick one or two workforce indicators that Congress should be closely watching, what would they be? I'll start with you, Dr. West.
Sure. So obviously, we want to be looking at indicators like layoffs as a frontline measure and trying to understand how that's maybe being disproportionately felt across the economy. I'd also, though, be looking at things like employment dislocation. We've seen, for example, a number of jobs being restructured so that they're sort of flexible or self-employed, and that also means that those workers don't have access to the same kinds of social safety net measures, and they're also sort of dually feeling the tax burden. So that's another place that I'd be looking closely.
Thank you. Mr. Reinhardt?
Yeah, I would be focusing on the unemployment rate within the AI-affected industries, right? There has been a whole bunch of these indices that have tried to understand job loss, potential job loss and dislocation. And I will say that right now we're really only seeing it with entry-level workers, people that are in the 20 to 24 range, 25 range rather. And I think there's actually a very good reason for that. If you're young, you don't have a lot of experience, you don't have skills, you can't show to employers that you're skilled or that you have the kinds of things for a job. And so my sense is what's happening right now is that the market is becoming very noisy. We talk about this as a problem in matching between employer and employee. And so those are the sorts of things that I'd be looking towards is really the unemployment in the AI affected industry and kind of the noisiness of the market.
I will follow up with the two of you and the other panelists on the data that we need and that's required. We've heard a lot of promise that AI will lower costs and improve affordability. Dr. West, what factors would demonstrate that those benefits are actually reaching consumers and families?
That's a good question. I mean, I think the things that we would be wanting to look for are, general inflationary indicators. I mean, honestly, what we're seeing is in many sectors of the economy, costs are really going up, and this is part of a generalized trend toward inflation. The utility sector, I think, is one example of that. Equally, we're seeing the rise of surveillance pricing, where data is being leveraged against people in ways that is increasing prices across the shelf.
Thank you. I have one more question
For the
here, and I will send more for the record. This is just a yes or no.
Oh, great.
For everybody on the panel, yes or no. Chairman Scott talked about the use of some of the tools. We use them every day. I signed up for one, loved it, and within less than a year, a pricing structure came out with multiple tiers. Are we at risk of broadening the digital divide? Yes or no?
I'm not an expert on that issue, Senator. Happy to take it back and give you some more thoughtful commentary.
Okay, Mr. Fife. It's just a yes or no. Do you think we're at risk?
I'd have to duck it too, but I'll.
I appreciate you saying you ducked it.
Thanks.
Mr. Ryan,
Yes, and I think there are things that we can be doing to address it.
would love to follow up with you on that.
Yes.
Thank you. I yield back.
Just in time for Senator Alsobrooks to have an opportunity to share as well. Thank
Right.
you so
Thank
much,
you.
LPR, for holding the floor for Senator Alsobrooks.
Yes,
to get
thank
here.
you so much.
We're so happy you made it.
Thank you. I'm glad I made it too. So thank you, Chair Scott and Ranking Member Warren, for holding the committee. Thank you also to these witnesses who are here today. You've heard already, we've heard the conversation about artificial intelligence and the enormous opportunity that it presents for our country. And if we get this right, I believe that AI can help American businesses grow, make government and financial services more efficient, and strengthen our national security. And I believe that the United States should lead the world in this technology. We shouldn't be afraid of innovation, and we should not create a regulatory environment that pushes the next generation of AI development overseas. But we also have to remember that innovation is most successful when people have confidence in it. For our American families, workers, small businesses, and communities, AI cannot just be happening around them or to them. It has to expand opportunity for them. So that means making sure that people can trust the systems that they are using, whether they're small businesses who are trying to compete, a worker learning new tools, or a family applying for a loan, buying a home, or managing their finances. It also means being clear-eyed about how this technology is deployed, especially in areas where the stakes are high for consumers, workers, and the economy. And we also have to be honest that for many workers, this moment brings real questions about job security and displacement. As this technology changes the way that Americans work, we have to make sure that workers are not being left behind or pushed aside, but supported with the skills and training that can allow them to use AI to their advantage. So the questions for me is not whether we should support AI innovation. We should. The question is how we make sure American innovation remains fast, competitive, safe, secure, and broadly beneficial. So the first question I have for Mr. Flynn, American advantage in AI depends in part on whether companies can build, deploy, and scale tools securely, especially in sectors like finance, where trust and reliability are essential. So when you talk to companies across the technology sector, what would you say they are most worried about? What are they saying could slow AI leadership? Is it cyber vulnerabilities? Would you say data rules, supply chain risks, or something else?
Thank you, Senator, for that question. I don't know if there's one thing, but certainly the supply chain challenges are very real. As the demand for AI capabilities expands, that does squeeze the supply chain in a number of areas. We don't always anticipate where those market adaptions may be. So I think it's incumbent upon Congress, upon all of us to keep partnering closely on this challenge to make sure that the supply chain issues can be do not become a plateau for our ability to continue to advance this technology.
So now in high-stakes sectors like financial services, what do you think would help adopt AI responsibly while giving consumers confidence that their sensitive data is being protected?
The cybersecurity challenge is real. Industry folks were encouraged by the president's executive order recently on AI and cyber. It's a good first start in terms of creating the right bureaucratic lanes and to make sure that there's good communication between industry and particularly affected critical infrastructure sectors, including financial services. But at the end of the day, in this immediate term, the information sharing challenge is going to be very real, which is why I've talked so much today about the need to authorize the Cyber Information Sharing Act of 2015, CISA 2015, that lapses at the end of this year. If it lapses, that would be an extraordinary unforced error in terms of the average American's ability to trust, right, that their systems are being well defended.
Now, lastly, to Dr. West. So I want to turn to public trust, which I see as an indispensable part of innovation. So if people, for example, can't trust AI systems, they just simply won't use them. If small businesses don't understand the rules, then they'll hesitate to adopt them. And if families are worried that AI is deployed in such a way that they cannot see, understand, or challenge, then we've built a system that can't be used. So what would it look like to build trust in a way that continues to support innovation so that the American people are able to take advantage of the opportunities that these new technologies provide?
I think trust will come when we have the right kind of sort of institutional measures in place that make sure that these systems are being adequately tested and vetted before they're, before they're impacting people or causing harm. We don't have, baseline mechanisms, especially in like these critical infrastructure areas that are requiring the systems to be evaluated if they're fit for purpose, if their efficacy, their safety. And I think that, focusing in there, making sure that this is happening before systems are entering the market is the right place. Otherwise, we're kind of left for companies to be grading their own homework.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
Well, thank you all for being present with us today. It's been quite informative, and we really appreciate it. This hearing is adjourned.